what story, if you want to go first, Taylor, or you, Sydney, however you want, what story about your dad that you have heard that you'd never known before that's suddenly become your favorite from somebody? You got something on that? You've run into somebody's, whether it was a fan or somebody that he covered or anything like that? You got something like that?
So here's the thing. There are definitely a couple of funny ones that I have learned over the past couple of years, and some of them have been from like friends, family members about his college days that they were like, we could not share this with you before you yourself was in college.
And now you have come of age.
Now you come of age. So there have definitely been some really funny ones. But I think, honestly, what have been the most special and the most interesting ones to me is I cannot tell you how many people have come up to me and said, I met your dad at an airport, in line at a fast food place,
Right.
wherever it may be. And they were like, oh, they gave their little spiel. They're like, I watched you growing up. I was so inspired by you. I want to go into broadcast. I want to go into sports journalism, like all of these different things. And they would talk about how he took, whatever couple of minutes out of his day to talk to them and to share about his experience and to give whatever advice he might have had. And
Yes.
I think, it's something that, it's like, that's kind, that's nice. But the overwhelming number, like just the fact that he was out in public and just like minding his own business and just like so enthusiastic and ready and willing to share like his experiences and his joy and his like all of those different things.
He had a lot of energy.
He had a lot of energy, and it's really, really special to know that, this isn't just something that he was reserved for either the camera or for his family, but like this is who he was 24/7. Always.
Yep. And so many people think that anything you see somebody who's successful with a personality on television, it's an act.
Yep.
Oh my God, no. I mean, the Stuart Scott that everybody saw on television is exactly the guy that you would meet anywhere.
Yep.
I totally wholeheartedly endorse that message.
Yep.
What about you, Taylor? You got any good story that you want to share?
I like hearing about his college days. And I also like hearing about, I think what was interesting for me is that a lot of his friends' kids were younger than me. And so I called you Uncle Rich. There was, Uncle Kenny. Everyone's my uncle. I thought you all were my friends because there was no other children around. I thought that it's really wonderful because I remember him, he used to talk about, I was thinking recently about SVP, Scott Van Pelt. He was like, I cannot wait until he is a father. He's going to be such a great father. And there's like this nerdiness about loving being a dad. And it was humiliating to me because he would just show all of my most private moments on his phone recorded to all of his friends.
Yes.
But I do now, with a little bit of space from that, I love the excitement that he had about, I get to do this thing and it is what I love. And I can't wait to see my male friends get to the place where they also know what this feels like.
Well, I've got two stories for you. Okay, here we go. And I've told them on this show every now and then, but I've got a personal one, and then I've got, well, I mean, they're both, off camera, but there's one about me and my wife, Susie, who I met at ESPN. And then there's one out and about. Which one do you want to hear first? The out and about?
Out and about.
Out and about. I'm going to tell the story, Chris.
It's one of my favorite stories.
Two Stuart Scott's daughters, okay? Taylor and Sydney here. Here we go. So it's the All-Star game in New York City. NBA All-Star game. I think it was 99. I think it was, right? It's the famous one where Kobe Bryant's waving Karl Malone off the blocks. It was discussed in The Last Dance, that documentary. Okay, so it's New York City. And Stuart and I, your dad and I, are doing an 11 o'clock Eastern Sports Center, okay? And for some reason, we got stuck doing it on a Friday night, which never really used to happen. Friday night, 11 o'clock Eastern Sports Center, and there was an event that was going on in New York City that night at the old All-Star Cafe, which was the restaurant that Shaq and Wayne Gretzky owned, and Ken Griffey Jr., I think, had all a big stake in it. And so we wanted to go, but the problem is that we couldn't leave the set until midnight. And we're like, should we do it? Should we do it? And your dad's like, what do you mean, should we do it? Absolutely, we're going to do it. So we got a car, a car. And we hopped in a car. The two of us sat in the back of a car, and we were driven to New York City, and it took 2 hours to get there.
Ooh.
It's 2 a.m, and we pull into Times Square, and everybody's leaving the party. The party's over. We get all the way down, the party's over. Your dad tells the driver to stop in the middle of Broadway, in the middle of Times Square. And I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm going to ask the cop where everyone's going next. And I'm like, why would the cop know? And he looks at me and goes, why wouldn't he know?
Gotta figure out where the
And
after
I'm
party
like,
is.
Stuart, we can't stop the car in the middle of like Times Square. He goes, basically gave me a look of like, watch me.
Yeah, we can.
So he gets out. And the cop knows exactly who he is. Like, you could just read the body language.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm not hearing what he's saying.
Yeah.
But you could see, and the cop's like giving him directions. And so your dad comes back and he says to me, get out of the car. I know where we're going next. And I'm like, where are we going next? And he goes, he gave me this look at like, will you shut up?
It's a night out
like,
with the boys.
I'm like,
Exactly.
it's a
The
night with the
after
boys.
party
I'm like,
awaits.
I'm like the nervous Jewish kid from Staten Island, New York. And he gives me a look like, just shut up. Let's go. Stop overthinking it.
Yep.
So I'm going to tell this story. Chris, it's great.
It's
right?
great. It's great. It's an all-time punchline.
Okay. So we're now walking down Times Square and now walking to the west side of Manhattan in a spot I've never been in my entire life. And I'll be very honest, as we're walking further and further west, I am the only white guy on the street. And your dad is walking down the street and everybody is stopping us every 2 minutes. And suddenly there's now dozens of people following us.
Everyone's
Dozens.
trying to go to the after party.
Dozens of people following us because they know, right? And so finally we keep walking, and one last guy stops, and he says to your dad, "Okay, like I'll look at you, Taylor. You're your dad, and Sydney, you're me." And so he says, "Oh my God, it's Stuart Scott." And he looks at me and he goes, "And the white guy."
That's beautiful.
The white guy.
Here's the thing. That's the appreciation, though. He said, "Wait, hold up. I know who
you
this
are."
is too.
The white guy.
His white guy.
Exactly.
Our white guy.
Exactly.
And the white guy.
That was high praise.
I was the white guy. And to say that your dad couldn't have loved that moment more.
I'm sure.
All right,
Oh my
so
God.
Here's the personal one.
Oh my God.
Here's the personal one here. Okay.
Yeah.
So I met my wife Susie at ESPN.
How many years together now?
Oh God, we're married 19. But we met in '96 when I first arrived, and it took a while for DJ's laughing already. It took a while for Susie and I to start becoming an item. We were you're laughing at that.
God.
It's the truth.
It was a slow burn.
That's one way of putting it.
Slow burn relationship.
We were just just friends for a while. I wanted to be more than just friends for a while, and your dad knew that, and he loved my wife Susie Schuster, who he called S squared. Okay, so he would constantly go up to S squared and kind of like say, "Why don't you like my guy?"
my guy here. Yep.
He would play us towards the middle all the time. Okay, and you see when I was a little bit down on it, just like, "Yeah, come on, just keep it going." Everything you talked about your dad, like wanting people to have families and start, like, you should be a dad and all that stuff. Exactly. So he's just like, keep going. Like, don't give up.
Get in there. Get in
Come
there.
on, man. Come on. And so we obviously became an item, and then we got married. And there's an incredible photograph from our wedding day, okay, where your dad looks at me and he looks at my wedding ring on my hand, and he's smiling. And the look said two things. One was essentially, I told you so. Okay. And the other one was, we did it.
Yep.
He said, "We as a team,
Like
we
basically,
did this."
like like you could see, he gets this look on his face, like we did it.
Here's the thing. That
we
doesn't
did it.
surprise me.
He was like, "We're in it together."
Yep,
We're in
because
it
he
together.
had the most, like he had the story of how he and my mom met,
Yes.
and he would always talk about the woman who introduced them, and he would tell it over and over and over again. So now knowing how important that story was to him, I know that he in his head was like, that was
I
me.
gotta pay it back.
I was the instrumental role here. Like we together did this.
Yes, like literally.
I'm so glad I helped create
I
Rich
know,
Eisen's
right?
family.
No, honestly, no, and there's honestly,
he did.
honestly, we did it. Like
did
that.
it.
That's the way he
He was
would take the
proud.
approach.
Yeah, he was proud.
And then again, the fact that we had so many incredible moments together on TV, meshing our two different upbringings and our two different pop culture, landscapes
Yeah.
as one,
Yeah.
team and unit. He'd call me, no offense, came like his TV wife, like I was his TV wife, is how he referred to
Little
me.
competition.